Your condition is not your conclusion. And I think it's something I learned over time. And I've gotten away from trying to like beat a kid down with my words, I should say, of like, it will get better, you know? And just encouraging them and having the faith that they'll eventually arrive to the destination I'm trying to get them to arrive to. And so helping them understand, like, look, the things that you're going through right now, it feels tough, it feels challenging, it feels like a boulder is on you and you're never going to get this thing off of you. But I promise you, if you endure, that things will get better, that your conclusion will be so much better than what you're doing with right now. The thing about running away from your problems is that you get to a point where you look in the mirror and you realize all these things have changed, but one thing hasn't, and that's you.
What is up? This is Coach Felix, and welcome to another podcast. And you know what? Before we begin today's conversation, I got a question for you. What if some of life's most painful moments in our life, what if they weren't meant to break us? What if they were meant to build us? Not just for us, but for someone else that was going to be in our life later on. And there's no shortcoming of that today. Many individuals often ask, Felix, how did you get involved in this speaking world? What kind of renewed or sparked this passion? And today, I have a guest that has sparked that passion within me. He might not know it, but this person, when I watched him speak, I was like, man, I think I know what I want to do. I want to help you. Can you guys help me welcome Mr. DJ to the Felix Bobo Podcast? Let's go. Let's get it. What's up, DJ?
Oh, man. Good to be here. Good to be with you. Super excited. I was grateful that you gave me the opportunity to come on, and we go way back, like 4 flats. So
woo, come on, man. Like I know I mentioned it, right? But students always ask me, you know, you and I, we're both in the same lane. We travel and we speak, and you're the reason why I actually go out and speak. Now, again, we understand this. It was a dream of mine, but I didn't really understand what was possible until I went to a conference one time. I don't remember the name of the conference. It was at the Ontario Convention Center. Oh, yeah. And I remember you were in the conference, you were leading the session, and I believe you were kind of sharing the story about your book, which I'll have you share in just a moment. And I was sitting there in awe of just your story. And I was just like, whoa, like sometimes, you know, you think as an individual, oh, you know, I didn't have a perfect life. And then I heard your story and I go like, dude, like I have no reason to complain. And that's not to bash anything. It's just your story of transformation and even your mantra of changing the narrative really just kind of awoken, I call purpose within me. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting there, and you might not remember this, but I waited in line. There was a long line of individuals wanting to have you sign their books and everything like that. And I started asking you questions. And I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but I believe that it's important to kind of follow the patterns of those that are, you know, leading the way. And I remember I found out, I think you were in school counseling. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go to school to be a school counselor. And I had a career. Like I was already in my career field for like years. And I was like, I'm going to go to school to be a school counselor. And then I want to go speak. And you sparked that within me. And that's what I mean when I say how you were able to change or transform or channel that pain that you experienced in your life into walking in your purpose. And not just for you, but you sparked something within me that now I'm going out impacting other people's lives, meaning we don't ever know whose life we're ever going to change or impact. And so thank you so much. I count it as an honor and privilege. My mentor, the person who sparked within me, took time out of his busy day to come and connect with me on the podcast. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, that was a lot.
Oh, come on, man. We can end it right now.
You know, it's funny. One of the things I'm working on is being able to accept compliments and being able to accept, like, I guess, praise. It's one of those things that I'm, you know, just really learning to just sit with, you know, and not, you know, deflect it back on somebody else, like, oh, but you do this, you know, like, and just sit with it. So for somebody that's out there and they're like, man, I felt that, DJ, like, yes, accept the praise, accept the compliments, just sit back and just accept the love. You know, that's something I'm working on.
It's hard to do. It really is. Because, you know, I see it in my head when you're saying that. Someone goes, hey, man, thank you. You're awesome. You want to go, thank you. You're awesome. Right. Like, it's hard for it just to take that and say, thank you. I appreciate it. Because sometimes you feel, am I disrespecting the person by not complimenting them back? Yeah. But I like that. Maybe I'm going to have to take on that challenge. And so thank you so much for inspiring me with that as well, too. Sir. Once again, you did it again. All right. But before we dive in, look, I know there's so many ways that we can go with today's podcast. It really is. I mean, I watch you present on emotional intelligence, just hearing your story more than once, seeing what you're doing now. I think that there's so many things that our audience of educators, of parents, of students can really learn from. But before we get into where DJ is at now, I believe it's important for them to know who DJ is so they can have that same connection that I have with you, so you can truly understand that we have an opportunity in life. Mm-hmm. We can allow the things in our life that has happened to us, the painful moments, to hold us back from accomplishing the things that I like to say that we were born to accomplish, or that can be the very thing that pushes us into our purpose. Mm-hmm. And I look at you as someone that has allowed those painful moments in your life to push you into purpose. And so, DJ, I don't know how far you want to go back, but like, what brought you, like, did you just wake up one day and say, I want to speak? Like, is that how it happened? Or like, what brought you to this place of where you're now like a speaker? But let's talk about before the speaker, DJ. Let's talk about before that.
Man, there's so many different like avenues I could take this, but I think the thing that kept coming up for me was I'm a finished product, but still an unfinished product. And so the finished product, I think about, like, I wasn't always the person that was so willing and open to share my story. I was always a person that kind of kept it to myself growing up as a kid, like having friends who didn't even know that I was in foster care. And just, I had to get to a point where I even embraced my story and embraced the fact that, you know, I went through things, and was I going to allow it to keep me down or hold me down, or was I going to use it for the greater good? And I think it took a lot of healing and a lot of understanding of just life and purpose and different things to help me get to a place where I finally was able to use my pain for someone else's gain. But we can start back with having parents that had me when they were 16 years old, and you can imagine the trials and tribulations that might come with that. Like, there were struggles, and my dad walked out of my life early. My mom ended up marrying my stepdad, which led to a lot of years of abuse between her. Me and my siblings suffered a lot of abuse. Just to give you context, not to go into stories. If it goes down that path, we will. But just to give you context for people out there, there's a thing called Adverse Childhood Experience, ACE score. And so what the ACE score asks you is, what type of trauma have you experienced from newborn till your 18th birthday? And there's 10 things that they ask you: sexual abuse, mental abuse, parents that went to jail, different things, right? And before I got to high school, I could score a 10 on the ACE score with all of the things that I experienced in my life. And now, to give you context, the ACE score says if you score 6 or higher on the ACE score, your lifespan could be shortened potentially by 20 years. So like, trauma and what it does to your body and your mind, your spirit, it impacts you on a real way. So when people hear my story, and when people hear the things that I went through in life, based off of the stats, based off of what you see when people go through those things, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be where I am. I'm not supposed to have experienced the things that I've experienced. And so now I look at it and I'm like, okay, if I went through those things and I'm still standing and I can use my story for the greater good, then what is my purpose here on earth? And I ultimately discovered that it was to help as many people as I possibly can, to uplift, to inspire, to help students, to help families. But I just had to get to a place where I healed from my story, and then took that story, and now I get to help so many people.
Now, you say you scored a 10.
Yes.
And you say anything higher than a 6.
Lifespan shortened potentially by 20 years.
You are a walking testimony.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I share with individuals, that could have been the thing that could have held you back from being where you're at today. Mm-hmm. At every reason. Because I don't want you to shortchange it, because you tell a story about your mom and something that transpired, and I remember, is it the vanilla wafer? The cookies, right? He does a good job. He's a great storyteller, and not he's making up stories, but he has a way of being able to encapsulate and bring you into the space. Yeah. Like you feel like I felt like I was actually there when you tell the story. I'm like, whoa, like, you know. So, but that story alone could have set you back years. Mm-hmm. And I work with individuals all the time, students, parents, and they will say why they're not where they want to be at in life. And a lot of it has to stem back to traumatic things that happened in their childhood. And we look at similar stories or even more devastating stories, and you look at what you're doing now, young man, we'll deal with where you're at right now, even with the competitor aspect of stuff and the discipline that it takes to even do that. Traveling the world, speaking, not just inspiring students, but parents as well as educators. And that's what I share with our listeners, is that the story that you've gone through it's an opportunity, right? That will help build us. We all have our stories. I have my story, but those things help build us so that we can truly walk into our purpose. We all have this idea and the dream, but we don't know the steps it's going to take us to actually get to that place. And so could you share with us the story? I have to so my audience can hear it about, there was a time your mom, I think she had left you guys left you to kind of be by yourself watching television or something like that, and brought you to this. Again, I don't want to tell the story. You go ahead and tell the story or whatever.
Yeah, so third grade, I'm the oldest of my 4 other siblings, so 5 of us total that my mom had. And
hold on, is this story in the book? In your book?
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. It's in your book. Changing it. Or no, the sun is always shining. Yes, exactly. Yes.
And so, we're downstairs watching a movie. I think it was Space Jam. I remember it being, and we're just watching it, having a good time. My mom was upstairs, not really sure what she was doing. But I remember my siblings were bothering me, asking me like, hey, can we have some cookies and juice while we watch the movie? And so, we couldn't go in the fridge without asking, didn't live in that type of household.
I remember those days. You ain't gonna tell me. Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, big brother, let me go ask my mom for the cookies and juice. And so I asked her, and then she ends up saying, yes, have the cookies and juice, but once the movie is over, go to your neighbor's house. And I was like, all right, that's weird, but okay. So go get the cookies and juice. It was vanilla sandwich cookies and orange juice. That's what we had. And we're enjoying it, having a good time. And the movie's not even over there. And I realized, like, wait a minute. It's the middle of the night. My mom wants us to go to the neighbor's house. It doesn't make sense to me. And so I yell up to my mom. She doesn't answer. Yell up again. She doesn't answer. I go. I knock on the door. No response. Now I'm panicking. I go downstairs. I grab my siblings. We go to the neighbor's house. The neighbor's wondering why we're out there in the middle of the night. And I tell her, like, hey, my mom told us to come over here. I'm not really sure why. So she sends her son. He doesn't get a response. They finally call the police. Ultimately, what ended up happening is my mom was attempting to commit suicide while our kids were downstairs watching a movie. And thankfully, we got to her in time. But that just would lead to a lot of different things that we would experience. We ended up not even a year later going into the foster care system. And so, just experiencing things like that, I realized that one of the things that I wanted to touch on that you said is, like, when we have our stories, it kind of has a lot of us stuck. Like, we feel like, man, I don't know if I can overcome this. I don't know if I can get past this. And I think there was a lot of that for me at one point in my life. I think there was a situation where I moved. So at this point, I'm in California. I'm 18, going on 19. Or was I 19? Might have been 19. Freshman year in high school. Or in college, I'm sorry. And I was living with my auntie at the time, and I had this thing with adults where I had a hard time, having adults tell me what to do. I had a hard time. I mean, I would hear, I was a good student for the most part, but like there was part of me that was like, I don't trust adults fully, because the adults that I trusted the most, my mom, my dad, they proven untrustworthy for lack of better words. And so I just had this wall up when it came to adults. And then when it came, when I see things or I got triggered by things, I would get upset, or I would put my guard up and just kind of take things into my own hands. And so at this time I was living with my auntie, and we just had a big disagreement. And I remember her saying, well, if you can't be a team player, then you need to essentially get out of my house. And so I was like, oh, that was the trigger for me. And I was like, okay, you just want to discard me? You just want to put me to the side? All right, don't worry about it. I'll move out tonight. Right. So I ended up, taking my stuff, staying at a friend's house. I was smart enough to finish my semester. It was towards the end of the semester. And I just got this random idea to move with my friend who I met a couple years back in Indianapolis. They had moved to Florida. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to hit them up. I was like, hey, I'm going to move there. We're going to go to college. We're going to have a good time. Get an apartment together, all this stuff. I had this whole plan. And so I ended up doing that, finished my semester, ended up moving to Florida. And the thing about running away from your problems is that you get to a point where you look in the mirror and you realize all these things have changed, but one thing hasn't, and that's you. Mm-hmm. And I literally had that come to Jesus moment, looking in the mirror and saying, okay, I moved to Florida. I moved here. I moved there. And somehow, some way, these issues and challenges that I keep running into just keep following me. So I realized like, okay, I think it's me. So one night, one of the things that would happen when I was there is my friend's dad would come over and bother us and bug us. And at this point, me, my friend, and his cousin, we living in a 3-bedroom townhome. I got 2 jobs. I'm taking care of things myself. I'm independent, INDEPE. You know, I'm independent, right? And so I am doing the dang thing. He would come over every now and then and just bug us, bother us. And I'll be like, yo, like, leave us alone. And what really bothered me about him is that he was an alcoholic. And that was a trigger for me. My stepdad was an alcoholic. I have different people in my family that were alcoholics. And so that was always a thing that bothered me, even to this day. And so he would come over, and one day he comes over and I'm just like, yo, man, leave us alone. Like, go away. Like, leave us alone. And he was really drunk that day. And man, he got so mad at me, picks up a steel chair, throws it at me, hits me in my head. And I'm like, days, I'm confused, I'm mad as heck.
And how old are you at this time?
At this time, I'm still a freshman in college.
You an adult, like okay,
yes,
okay,
exactly. Right. So I'm really like, and honestly, the way I tell the story is that I literally had a moment where there's an angel on one side and devil on the other side. You know, you watch those movies or TV shows when that happened, and the devil is like, kick his butt now, explicitive, right? And the angel was like, think about this. Right? You moved across the country, away from your family, away from friends, right? Let's say you beat this man up as mad as you are, you're going to go to jail. Like with how mad you are and how drunk he is, he's going to end up being hurt very badly. So there's a chance you're going to go to jail, and who's going to bail you out? You think your best friend, whose dad you just beat the crap out of, is going to, he's like, you don't have nobody here. So go ahead and make that decision if you want to. And it was just like, man, why you gotta be right, angel, you know? And I literally, with all the strength in me, walked out, went down like our neighborhood apartments, just kind of walked away. Ended up calling my grandma, who made me promise to call her every time since I moved to Florida. She was very mad about that. And she was just like, baby, are you gonna keep running from your problems? And I was like, no, I can't anymore. And so it was like a couple of weeks later, I ended up coming back to California. But that was kind of my moment where I finally realized, like, okay, DJ, you had all these things happen to you. Your mom got on drugs, wasn't able to take care of you. Y'all went to the foster care system. Your dad was never in your life, ended up having a bunch of other kids that you never really met. Like, your stepdad was abusive. All these things that happened to you, DJ. I get it. I understand. I hate that you had to go through those things, but eventually you're going to have to take responsibility for your actions. You're going to have to take responsibility for the things that you're responsible for. And that was that moment. And when I got back to California, it just shifted something in me. And now you see the person that I am today. That
pivot.
Yeah.
We all have experienced that pivot, or I know that I have. That I never knew the thing about the chair. And I'm like, that would have been my pivot the other way. I just want to let you know you were better.
It had WWE vibes for sure.
God knew what you can handle, and he knew what I can handle. But but that same kind of moment happened for me in Germany. I was going through that transitional time, and I think you mentioned something very important. It's just like you start to ask the questions of like, okay, I've moved to different places. I'm hanging out with different people, and they keep saying the same thing about me, and I keep making the same decisions. And I tell students this all the time that I work with. You know, when we avoid stuff, it just allows for that stuff, the cycle just keep repeating over and over again. But when we accept it and we learn from it, now we go to the next level. And at the next level, there's going to be more challenges. Yeah. But the thing is, some of us, we haven't learned how to avoid the fight is because we haven't navigated through the fight. We haven't tried to get support through the fight. I don't want to fight no more. And guess what? When you're done fighting, guess what? Now there's going to be a new challenge. But this is why sometimes as adults, you're dealing with the same problems you was dealing with back in elementary school is because we haven't learned, we've been avoiding the problem instead of learning how to navigate through the problem. And I think part of this goes into was something I found profound that you did this training. We actually had a chance to co-facilitate a training with a group of students. Is this EI? Yeah. Now I'm not talking about Ellie. EI. Right. Oh, right. I'm not talking about. But we're talking about emotional intelligence. how much of that plays not knowing it at the time, right? Because this is new terminology. We didn't always call it emotional intelligence. I mean, it's been around for a while, but did you start to dive in a little bit deeper to that? Is that what drove you into like wanting to know more? Is that the same? Is it different? Are we even on a different path as far as what helped you to kind of get to this place now?
Yeah, I think being able to have that shift, and then when I came back, at the time before I left California, I was at Cal State Fullerton. So I finished my semester there. I attempted to go back, wasn't able to. So I ended up going to Long Beach City College, and shout out to my track coach, John Hall, who was recruiting me before I went to Florida. And I was like, hey, I'm going to a university. Like, I'm not going to a JC. And when he heard I came back to California, he was like, hey, the offer still stands.
So athlete, you were an athlete.
I was.
Okay,
yeah,
all right. You're still an athlete, but yeah, okay, all right.
So I ended up running track at Long Beach City, and man, I still to this day credit my time at Long Beach City with a lot of my growth and the person I became. I got into the poetry scene at that time, which I think was kind of the antithesis of me speaking at the level that I do now. Because I wasn't always a polished speaker. I wasn't always a person that was willing to get on the mic, but exposing myself to open mics and sharing my story. That was kind of the first real ways that I would share my story is through my poetry, and then, got pumped up to do hosting open mics. And so that's kind of the evolution of me being a person that's so willing to be on the mic now. And so, being able to do that. And then when I transferred to Laverne and just taking different courses and learning about different things. But I think what really led to the emotional intelligence and just really tapping into counseling and just the idea of like psychology and just the brain and trauma and all that was when I first started working at a nonprofit called Reach Out. And through that work, it kind of forced us full on to really embrace those things and those ideologies to really understand and help our students. And the more I dove into that work, it really sped me into the person I am today, for sure. Sped that process up.
So you mentioned this, and I should have shared this before, because I read this book called it's what happened to you. I don't know if you read this book.
Yeah, Dr. Bruce Perry.
Yes. And he shares this story. It reminded me of your story, that he was working with an educator, and he said there was this one boy in his classroom that every time, and this teacher never had any challenges. As a matter of fact, he was a very liked teacher on the campus, but he had issues with this one student. Again, long story short, great book. It kind of gave me a lot of insight into a lot of things. It was saying that basically the student would always act out in his class, and they couldn't place their finger like, what is it? Like, this teacher has a great relationship with all the other students. Yeah. After they had dug a little deeper, they found out the boy had a very traumatic childhood with his father. His father was an alcoholic, all these different stories that would come out of this. Yeah. But come to find out that the teacher wore the same deodorant as the father. Wow. And so every time, like, he didn't realize the subconscious mind, and I believe this is what it was mentioning. And I share this because I work with a lot of educators. And I know it's hard to take it's hard not to take behavioral issues personal. Yeah. And I'm never one to say, you can't take it personal, because like sometimes you be like, I took that personal, like I'm taking it personal sometimes. Yeah. But you mentioned again, and I know you've probably had your share of stories when you were going to school, foster student, being brought up, the things you experienced as a child, reacting to certain things in the classroom. Certain teachers maybe rubbed you the wrong way. They said things the wrong way, and it wasn't really about them. It just, we don't realize how much of an impact that childhood has on us. Like, what things would you say to an educator that may, when we look at emotional intelligence, when we look at sometimes not understanding what's below the surface, and not just educators, but parents, like, how do we navigate through sometimes these behavioral challenges? My son, he just entered in middle school, and I don't know, it's like a switch that goes on to say middle school time. You like, wait a minute, what happened to the nice 5th grade boy there? So, but like, help my educators, help me out as a parent. Like, how can emotional intelligence help us in how to build and harness the power of relationships, with those that we love and we want to support?
Yeah, I think this might be one of those hard pills to swallow, but one of the things that I've long thought between educators and parents is that there's not enough information about either available or that we're not seeking out about child development. I say this especially about parents. There's a lot of things that we get upset about as adults when it comes to young people, children, that turn out to be developmentally appropriate, especially when it comes to teenagers. I love bursting bubbles when I do there's this particular parent workshop that I do, and I tell them like, hey, like, you know, there's about 20% of your teenager's brain that doesn't develop until they're 25. And I want to guess that the things that you tend to get upset at your teenager about has something to do with that 20% that doesn't mature yet. Now, somebody might hear that and be like, oh, even more reason for me to be in control of my teenager, right? Yeah. But for me, I tell you to hear that and give grace and give understanding of like, okay, they don't all got it all the way. So how can I hold space for that? How can I get them to cultivate and learn and grow so they can get to a place where they can do, and it's like it's mood swings, it's behavior, impulsiveness, all these different things.
Choices that they're making. Yeah.
Did you
think about that before you did it? No, I didn't think about it before I did it. Why? Because I was in the moment and I didn't process that, you know? So, yeah.
Exactly. So for me, I think that's the first step, is being able to like, and I don't know what that's going to take, right? I don't know if it's, you know, when teachers are going through the educational process, like, is that something that they add to but for me, being able to like that changed the game for me when working with young people. Like I've always kind of had this thing with, I've been in after school stuff since 2009, just really been working with young people for so long. But what changed the game for me with teenagers in particular, it was understanding them more, understanding the brain development, the brain science. There's a book that I always recommend called The Teenage Brain.
Okay, it's great book. I read that book. Yeah, it's a red book, right?
Exactly. Okay, yeah. And it just, man, I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, like it just opened up so many doors in terms of like things that I kind of had an idea just seeing from the teenagers, but it just validated so much. And so me being able to understand that gives me a level of patience with teenagers that most adults don't have. And so for me, the start is that development piece, whether it's young kids up until, right, I think of young people for people that have maybe toddlers or babies. There's a thing called schemas, right? Where it's like there's certain things schema wise that kids will do that they're playing into the schema. You could be mad that your kid keeps wanting to spill juice over. That's a schema. You could be mad that they keep wanting to throw things. So me understanding that helps me have a level of patience and understanding when things happen. I'm like, oh, okay, that it, right? And some people might be like, well, I still get annoyed by it, DJ. Well, get it. I got it. But like, you can understand where it's coming from. In our minds, we make up these stories about, oh, they're just doing it just because, or they're doing it to upset me, or, you know, I want to say piss me off, but that's the reality, right? And most times it's developmental. And if we understood that, it helps us be able to see the situation differently.
I think it does, because when you have that understanding, I think that helps us to not take it personal.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm similar to you. There are a lot of things that, again, not faulting anybody. I have a lot of conversations with parents and educators, and you know, I have these conversations, and I want to tell them in the most respectful way. I'm like, that's normal. Like, you know, it's like, you know, it's normal. And yes, I'm not ever dismissing. I'm not ever excusing. And that's where I guess I want to dig into, like, where's the line there between excusing? I don't think we ever saying that we're excusing behavior, but it's more of this awareness of realizing that sometimes where some of these behaviors stem from. Yeah. You know, so as a parent and as an educator, where do I draw the line? Like, you know, behaviors keep happening. How can I help them to navigate through my sanity, as a father, as an educator, but I'm also have a responsibility of bringing awareness to something that maybe a student or my own child is doing. Like, how do I draw that line between saying, hey, that's okay, to where it's just like, that's not okay, dude. Like, don't do it again, you know? Because we want to say that.
I think being able to have the understanding gives you the patience to be able to sit back and say, okay, I'm help you with your response to the situation, right? The other level is you don't know it. Most likely your child doesn't know about this developmental thing that they are doing that they don't even realize, right? They're making a decision and they can't tell you why. We always ask, why'd you do that? I don't know. Like, they really don't know sometimes. So helping them understand, like, hey, you know, there's things that are going to happen for you that you're just going to learn over time, right? And the most impactful thing that you could do as far as changing behavior is having a conversation around it, right? There's a terminology out of the, what is the book? I think it's also Dan Siegel. But in the book, they talk about upstairs brain, downstairs brain. Mm-hmm. And so I always bring that up to parents of like, I think we always think as parents that the most effective way to get something across to our children is yelling at them. But the reality is I share a joke.
Wait, that's not the most effective way? Hold on.
I share a joke.
Hold on 1 second. If my son listen to this, so we got to cut this. No, just like.
So I share a joke about how in my years of being a kid and being yelled at, never in the times of me being yelled at did I sit there, thought, and was like, man, my parent is so right. I totally shouldn't have done the thing that they are yelling at me about. Ever. I've never done that. What I am thinking, my downstairs brain, I'm trying to protect myself. And knowing my parents the way that they did with the trauma that I experienced, I see that they have a chair next to them. I see that there's a belt next to them. So I'm just trying to make sure I don't get hurt. I'm not listening.
We're going to defense mode.
Exactly. So
I wonder if defense mode, and again, I'm trying to encapsulate it. I wonder if defense mode and whatever other mode the parent is trying to get them to, even if they coexist, like, could you be in, like, we're expecting for them to be in one mode, like learning, like, I won't make that mistake again. But yet a child is in defense mode. Yeah. And I wonder if those two could even coexist together, because in my mind, I would think of like when I'm in the defense mode, there's no way that I can be in the learning mode. Yeah. It's the same that educators may struggle with a student learning something in the classroom. Yeah. We're expecting them to learn, but yet I can't get them to learning mode if they're in defense mode. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow.
So
okay.
I encourage parents. So the back to your question of like, what can we do in the middle ground is, one, understanding it for yourself, helping them understand it for themselves. You understanding for yourself allow you to be more patient, allow you to have the response that I'm trying to encourage you to have, which is, how do I get you to a place where we can have a conversation about this, where you can learn to do it differently next time? And that's where we're activating their upstairs brain, which allows them to think before they act, as opposed to act before they think, which is the downstairs brain. So that, for me, is what I always encourage parents to do, is the understanding of it, helping them understand it, and then, okay, what can you do differently next time? Not in a like, God, you dodo brain, like do it, like just say, hey, what can we do differently next time, right? What can that look like? And then you give them an opportunity to do it better next time.
So we did this on one of our other podcasts, and we talked about the art of questioning, right? We don't, a lot of times as a parent, I don't want to ask questions. One, I just want to get my point across. Yeah. I just want to say, don't do it again. Yeah. But I think we rob our children of the opportunity to process things when we don't ask them questions. The art of asking questions is for them to process stuff. But with that, again, going back to that teenage brain book, the frontal lobe hasn't fully developed yet. So where we're thinking they should be processing, that part hasn't been processed or it hasn't been formed yet in their brain to process. And I'm guessing, again, I haven't read the book in years, like how we can do that is to give them the opportunity to process things, by asking questions. Tell me what you were thinking when you did that, instead of like, don't do that again. Because now I've instilled fear in you. And I believe there was a scene like, I grew up on fear. Don't do it again or else. Okay, I ain't going. But I also realized it just taught me to be very good at not getting caught. To where now, where you said you started to process 18, 19 years of age in college. Okay, I moved here. Yet you processed it because you just like, it wasn't someone like, do you want to get your life? You can make this decision, shaking you and do whatever. It was like, it was DJ processing something and coming to a conclusion and saying, I don't want to keep making the same mistake over again. How much longer do I want to keep going around this hamster wheel of making the same choices? And are we robbing our kids the opportunity to process when we yell? Like I said, I hope my son's not listening to this, right? I'm work in progress, right?
Hey, I say I'm a recovering yeller.
Exactly. So, because we think sometimes that's the best way, but I'm hearing and understanding now that may not be the best way.
It's the easiest and quickest way, but we are in the parenting journey for the long haul. It's a marathon. I always think marathon over the sprint. I think a lot of times as parents, we want the sprint because it's easier, it's quick. We got all these things that are stressing us out, so it's just easier for me to yell at you and you do exactly what I need you to do. But we also got to think about the long haul. And I always, if parenting gets hard, I just kind of want y'all to think about this. Like, I tell people all the time, I parent for when my son is 25, 30 years old, and he's having a conversation with his homie or friend or girlfriend, whoever it might be, and they're asking him what he's going to do for the holidays. And I want, based off of my relationship that I built with him, I want for his answer to be, I can't wait to hang out with my family because we do this, we do that, we have this, we have these, right? And I don't want it to be, I'm going to go as far away from my family as possible because of this relationship. I think we get so caught up in either high school graduate, like we think of these things that are right in front of us that we're like, oh, we got to get our kids to this, good grades, whatever it might be. And we just forget that your kid is not going to stop being your kid at 18. They're always going to be your kid. And so based off of the connection and relationships that you're building now, can those things stand the test of time based off of what you built now?
You said something key, the things you're doing now.
Exactly.
And you hear, and you've probably had conversations like this, you know, let's fast forward 10 years from now. Yeah. They're coming up to people like us, having conversations with us. DJ, I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And not to say that we can't heal the pain that's been, caused or the trauma, but it's hard to go back. Yeah. It's hard to go back to Jackson being 12 years old and now he's 18, 19 years old and now I'm trying to instill things in him. No, the time is now. Mm-hmm. The time is now when my daughter's 8 years old, my son is 12 years old to have these conversations because as you mentioned, I don't want to be holding Jackson's hand 24/7. I want Jackson to realize that one day he's going to be driving in a car one day and he's going to have to make a decision. I want Jackson to understand that one day a group of boys are going to be like, hey, come over here, let's go and do this. And Jackson needs to process for himself because dad's not going to hop out of his back pocket and say, hey, don't do that. Like he's going to have to process that and go, what am I doing? Not what would dad say, but like, what's the decision that I need to make? And at the end of the day, guess what? Every decision is not going to be perfect. Yeah. But now there's a time for us to reflect. And guess what? I tell both of my kids, we got to own up to those mistakes. Mm-hmm. We got to take accountability for those mistakes because when we avoid, we remove that thing out of us that we need, that angel devil that you had to say, no, we remove them out of the way. And what happens is we'll just start to do what we feel what we want to do. And that's not always the right thing that we need to do. And so sometimes we need that voice of reason. Sometimes we need that emotional intelligence that says, what will be the consequence of this decision? What will be the reward of this decision? Mm-hmm. And I think that as parents, as some educators, we need to do a better job of asking the right questions. I know it takes more time.
Yeah.
But time is, I believe, one of the greatest commodities that we have as a human race is the time. I always say with students, we always think we have more than what we actually do. And it's just like, or sometimes we don't have enough. We actually like, oh, I got a month to complete this project. Okay, well, that month sure did go by fast. And now you're up the night before. Or you think a freshman comes in and go, oh, I got 4 years to get together. And then all of a sudden you talk to them as a senior. I say, you remember being a freshman? They're like, yep, I remember being a freshman, right? Time is so valuable, and how we spend that time building relationships, how we spend time on investing in the future. And the time is now, the investment is now that we need to do. And I share with educators, sometimes we might not see the results of that time invested. The greatest reward that I've seen happen in my life is students that I work with, and 4 years later, maybe we fell out of contact, but somehow they find me through social media or they see me maybe out in the public, and they come up to me and they go, hey, I just want to thank you so much. But I tell you this, I never knew that thank you was coming based on what was happening during that time. Yeah. I just shared I spoke a couple weeks ago out of New Mexico, and I was sharing with the educators that I had this one student that I think every educator has, that you go like, whoo, like it's gonna be an act of God to like help save you, but never giving up on a student. Yeah. But you just see the path that they were on and having conversations with them, asking the right questions, but it doesn't seem like anything was working. And I remember when I left the school that I was at, where the student was at, that was one of my hardest things to say bye to, because I realized, one, I was a male role model that young boy had in his life. Whenever he would get in trouble on campus, they would send him to come and talk to me. I would always go check on him before class, but you would still see that he was hanging around the wrong crowd, making the wrong decisions. And I was truly blessed. The mom had found me on Facebook, and she left me this message talking about just like thanking me for, pouring into her young boy, and that he was graduating, and she accounted part of that process with the time that I invested in him. And I was just like, it was like a moment of like, whew, sometimes we might not ever see the full, maturation of the time that we're putting in right now, but it's going to happen. We're just responsible for depositing seeds. And I think that's what we're doing daily when we're having these interactions with students, and what educators are doing and what parents are doing. We're depositing seeds. And at the right time, they will reap a harvest, And so that's why I never shy away from a conversation with a student. No matter how difficult that student is, I never shy away from just kind of just sharing some wisdom, sharing a little bit of my story with them, because I realize one day they might need that story. Yeah. One day they're going to reflect back on that conversation. My desire, and probably your desire, is not for it to be in a situation where like maybe they sit in a jail cell like, dang, I should listen to that Bobo kid. Like, that Bobo speaker when he was speaking. But my desire is that they're going to be faced with a situation, not just saying like, what would Bobo do? What would Coach Felix do? But like, they're like, man, what did he say that day? Mm-hmm. Oh man, guess what? Challenges are always going to be here in life, but I can navigate through this challenge by going to get support. So maybe instead of fighting, maybe I'll go talk to a DJ and saying like, hey, dude, I got this situation that I'm facing. I don't know how to get out of it. And that conversation can be this very thing that they needed. And you know what I mean? And so that's what I realized. But I realized that, to be honest, a lot of, and even myself, where I catch myself, is where sometimes I feel like giving up. And by any means, I'm not giving up. Mm-hmm. And I'm going somewhere with this, because I think you might understand a little bit more of this than what I do. Is I share with educators and parents, not just mental health, but our physical health. Yeah. Okay. I realize that sometimes I will catch myself yelling at my kids. You yell? Yes, I yell. I'm a human being, right? You know what? Maybe because I got 4 hours of sleep because I didn't prioritize my rest. Mm-hmm. Or maybe because I didn't down 3 energy drinks. And, now it's like, and I say this with you because you've taken on a whole nother level of, they see you DJ now, right? I remember DJ in the room. You might have had on a medium shirt, and all that good stuff. Now, I asked you what size hoodie you are. You like extra large. I'm like, okay, dude, we stepping in the same lane now. Yeah. But just the mental discipline as far as our health and how important that is as men, as educators, as parents, how important it is to take care of your physical health, because out of that is going to sometimes flow how we respond in certain situations as well too. And I don't even know if you want to even go there, but I thought about like asking you that, because this is more so for me than anybody else. Like how can you have the mental fortitude to kind of stay that course with making sure that I prioritize my health too, so that I'm leaving a lasting impact and legacy for those that I'm working with?
Yeah, I think it all kind of started for me. I used to always have like what I call a no weight.
Okay.
And so like a weight that I reach that I just don't feel comfortable being at anymore. And so I reached that, I want to say in like 2019, around there. And I just kind of got some help and got some assistance in terms of coaching and different things like that to get back on track. I think I've always been an athlete. So as athletes, we have a good idea of what we feel like will get us in shape. Whether it's like extensive running or getting back into some cardio or lifting weights. And I always had this not great relationship with lifting weights because of being an athlete for so long. We were in the weight room, not necessarily as a punishment, but like I wasn't always a person that went in the weight room and was like, yay, weight room. It was kind of like a tough thing as an athlete. So I always kind of had this idea of like around it. And as I got out of my athlete ways and just kind of was an adult, I shifted my energy around what weightlifting meant for me, and learned it in a different way and really embraced it. And so I challenged myself originally with like 75 hard, and then
you did a 75 hard?
I did, yeah. And then
all right.
Once I got through that challenge, and I was like, okay, what's next? And then I did Spartan races, so I ended up doing a trifecta in that, which is the 5K, 10K, and the 21K. And then after that, I was like, okay, let's try this bodybuilding thing, because I had some friends that did it, and I was intrigued by it, but always thought, I can't do that. I can't be at a birthday party and can't eat no cake or food or whatever, because I'm in prep. And I just was like, one day, just pulled the trigger and got a coach and did my first competition in 2023. And so it kind of started from there. But I think to speak to what you talked about, and that's like, now I've built up something in lifting weights, working out, that it just feels uncomfortable for me when I don't do it. And you got to get to a point where your discipline is like, all right, I got to get to a point where this feels uncomfortable when I don't do what I'm used to doing.
Yeah.
And so because I pour into myself in that way, it makes it a lot easier to be able to pour into my students, be able to be the family man that I need to be to my wife, to my son. And so those are the things that I encourage parents to do. Like, you gotta, I say, go to the gas station, fill your tank up, right? Don't be driving around on E like I be doing when I got 0 miles to gallon, but I tell myself I still got 10, right?
And that's where, exactly. And that's where I'm like, we're having these conversations and like, you know, how do we build relationships with students? You know, how to, you know, look at behaviors, not personal. But if I'm not taking care of myself, I tell you this, my fuse is a lot shorter. You just look at the domino effect, right? Like, so there's a relationship with food, you know, so when I'm stressed, I start eating certain things. So then when I start eating certain things, then I start picking up the weight. So now I'm not satisfied with myself. So then any kind of thing that happens, like I want to snap off. I'm driving down the street because I'm just frustrated. I'm stressed out. Then I snap off on some, you know, it's a domino effect. And I think what we often forget to mention, yes, it's about the students. Yes, it's about our children, but it starts with us. And I think that one thing you've shown me is like, and it's not about lifting weights and how much you can lift. It's about prioritizing and being disciplined. Because I think that once you get the discipline to do what you've been doing, like how I respond to a student, not saying it's always perfect, but now I've worked at that discipline in another area of my life. I can work it in this part of my life though too as well, where normally I want to snap off on a kid because I'm now more disciplined in that one area. I now maybe can control my response a little bit more. So instead of yelling, I ask a question. Hey, I'm a little curious on that. Why did you make that decision? Well, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Like, I just think that once we can learn to work something in one area of our life, it has the ability to transfer to all other areas of our life though too as well. So I commend you for that. So,
and to your point, like one of the things that we haven't talked about enough is like the importance of modeling. And so like going through this fitness journey, didn't think that students would even care, but it becomes a topic of conversation. I have students now that, hey, you competing still, or you know, doing this. And there's times where I've been in a session with a student as in my counseling portion of what I do with life. And, you know, it's one of those days where prep is tough and I'm running on low carbs and just looking pale and just low energy. And they're like, you good? Because they're used to a certain DJ. And I'm like, I mean, it is what it is today, but we pushing through, right? But like I'm a model of the discipline I'm trying to instill in them with their decision making and different things. And they're like, oh, he actually walks it like he talks it. Like he actually lives the life that he tried to get me to live. So it makes it a lot easier for them to buy in.
My last podcast guest, he was saying I guess he's working on a book, Free People, Free People. And it is this idea of not just the belief, but the things that we have overcome in our life. I often will share with, you know, my family. There was one time where I'm working with a student, they're battling addiction and I'm trying to process, you know, everything. And I felt that I did help the student that day. But I remember I went back to my office. I do the self-reflection. What could I have said better? What could I have done differently? And I thought, I'm like, how can I have this student about, you know, working through, you know, addiction that he having, and I can't stop eating some of the food that I'm eating. And again, some of y'all will feel that's different. Like, well, really, it's really not. Like, I share with those students now when I go out and speak, you know, I was addicted to Sour Patch Kids, you know, and I shared this funny story because I want to end with asking you a few questions before we get out of here. But I remember I had just got done having a conversation about, you know, addiction was, and I had meal prepped, you know, like what you do. Like I had meal prepped my food, I brought it in, and I was like, I'm getting on straight and narrow. I'm doing it right. I'm on you know, my macros, all these different things. And this teacher called me and she goes, hey, she's like, I was in New York last week. And I was like, yeah, like how was it? She's like, you know, my favorite candy is Sour Patch Kids. And she was like, you know, there's a Sour Patch store. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, they got all kinds of flavors you never had before. I was like, yeah. And I was just like, she was like, I got you a bag. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, come down to my classroom. And I remember it was like the slowest walk because I knew I had made a commitment to myself that I was going to do right. And here I am. And this is what we tell ourselves. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Like the students say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But yet we find ourselves walking towards that thing. And I remember she handed me the bag and it was like this, I always tell her, it's a jumbo size bag of Sour Patch Kids, bulk size. And I remember that, like, I always eat 2 of them at a time, right? And I was like, oh, my goodness. And for that moment, I paused and I said, this is what some of our students deal with. They want to do better. They want to make better choices, but it's hard. Yeah. And, I think I share this because it does. It starts with us. It starts with us making the decisions that whatever it is that we want to accomplish. Yeah. If it's starting a business, if it's writing a book, if it's losing the weight, if it's buying the house, I believe that when we begin to lead from a place of belief, not that we've accomplished or that we're perfect, but like we lead from a place of like, I'm doing this and I'm working through this just like you guys are. I think our compassion is a little bit more there. And I think we're able to connect with those students a little bit more and also to share that with them as well too. I think that's where we connect with a lot of students because we share our struggles. We share those things with them too as well. And so anything else you want to share in regards to that?
No, yeah.
Okay.
No.
All right. So let's a little rapid fire really fast. If you can speak to a student that may be struggling, of course, maybe not the magnitude of the things that you've been through in your life, but maybe they're struggling. Maybe they've experienced, you were a foster child, you were going through a difficult time, but they can't seem to see a way out. And they have used every excuse of why they are where they are and it's not where they want to be at. What would you say to that student?
I just say, old mentor used to say all the time, your condition is not your conclusion. And I think it's something I learned over time. And I've gotten away from trying to like beat a kid down with my words, I should say, of like, it will get better, and just encouraging them and having the faith that they'll eventually arrive to the destination I'm trying to get them to arrive to. And so helping them understand, like, look, the things that you're going through right now, it feels tough. It feels challenging. It feels like a boulder is on you and you're never going to get this thing off of you. But I promise you, if you endure, that things will get better, that your conclusion will be so much better than what you're dealing with right now. And I think being able to hear that and see that is one thing, but I think when they finally come to the fruition on their own and with you consistently just telling them, hey, it's going to get better. I'm proud, like it's going to get there.
Love it.
It helps.
Love it. Okay. A parent struggling with their son or daughter. Maybe they're 12 years old. No, I'm just playing. Maybe they're just entered in teens. Maybe, maybe say middle school, maybe early high school. And they just seem like nothing is getting through. This is at one time, this was their baby. They could do no wrong, but now it seems like nothing is sticking. What would you say to that parent?
Yeah, I think I always challenge parents, depending on what the situation is, to have like a reset, like a hard reset. And that reset looks like going to a place that's neutral, whether it's a coffee shop, maybe I'll go grab a bite to eat, and just go to a place where you as a parent can just lay everything out on the table and say, hey, I hate that we keep arguing. I hate that we haven't agreed on things much. So here's where I'm at. I want things to be a certain way or whatever it might be, like, but I also don't want us arguing it. Like, what is it that I could do better as your parent in your eyes? And then the child can put out there, like, what is it that you feel like you could do better in this situation to make the thing, like, just have a conversation where there's no strings attached, no anger or frustration attached, where, like I said, a neutral place, not in the home, but just somewhere where y'all can get to a place and just have a conversation. I always used to say, like, the person that could tell you how to parent your child better is the child that's being parented. And you might feel like, well, they don't know any better, right? But they know themselves. And I think as much as we like to think we know our kids, we don't know all of it. And a thing to also come to grips with is we don't have control over them at the end of the day. They're going to make their decisions. They're going to do the things that they do. And so being able to have a conversation and cultivate their thoughts and helping them understand, like, their thoughts and the things that they want to say matters in this home, that goes a long way in seeing the positive communication that's going to move a relationship forward. I was going to say this earlier, like, I have invested in the relationship with my son. Like it's a lot of times as parents, we put our relationship with our child in one category and every other relationship is in a different category. And what I'm saying is that relationship is just as important as any other relationship that you get into. You got to cultivate that like you cultivate your relationship with your spouse, right? If you ain't been dating your spouse or hanging out with your spouse for a while, of course, things are going to be rocky. If you're not cultivating, taking your son out, hey, let's go for a coffee. No strings attached. Let's do this, right? Let's hang out. Let me be invested in what you're invested in. That's cultivating a relationship. That's investing in a relationship. And so being able to do those things helps move you in the right direction when it comes to that parent-child journey.
Okay. Last group of people. I love that, what you just said too. Last group of people. I'm an educator in the classroom. Mm-hmm. With all that's happening, you see the stories on social media, everything's happening. They're just like, I pray for our educators, and I'm never here to say, come on. But what is one thing that you would encourage educators to prioritize when working with students? And we're not just talking about, the quote unquote bad students or the one that's giving you behavioral issues, but like, what's one thing, you're on a campus on a daily basis. What's one thing that not only you prioritize, that you would share with educators your message of like, this is the thing that I would prioritize and I would make of the utmost importance?
What does it look like to have your classroom be a safe space? For me, that's something I always cultivate. Students come in, a lot of times, depending on the situation, they might be referred unwillingly. But no matter if it's unwillingly or willingly, I create a space that's safe for all students. And I try to let them know that their thoughts and feelings matter here. I try to let them know that, I'm not going to do anything or say anything that's going to make them feel some type of way. I just want them to know that they're safe here, because I don't know what's going on outside of the school. I don't know what's going on at home. And most of the times the students that I have to interact with don't have great home life situations. And so how can I be the one safe space where I'm sure if you ask students all across this country, educators, if you ask your students, those students have a favorite teacher either now or in the past, where and just ask them like, hey, what is it that made this teacher your favorite, right? And most times it'll have something to do with how that teacher made them feel, the safety that they provided, whether it's how they speak to the students, whether it's, hey, you can ask me anything. I'm not gonna get mad at you if you ask me a question that I went over 15 times. Well, maybe that kid just couldn't process in the moment. Maybe, we just don't know. But as an educator, I would challenge you, how can you make your space, your classroom, whatever it might be, a safe space for your students, and see what that does.
Awesome. Well, DJ, my man, I want to thank you so much. As I always say, your time, your effort, your energy, this truly blessed me today, more than what you know, from a father, from an educator, as a person as a man just trying to navigate through this world, embracing challenges as they come. Thank you so much for inspiring me. It's not from afar, but it's from up close, because I know whenever I got a question, I can call you, and you're definitely there for me. So I appreciate you. What's up? Anything upcoming for DJ that we can share?
Yeah, I got a parent workshop that I'm doing with D. Hankins Wednesday morning.
Shout out D. Okay, all right. Got to get him on the podcast.
Yes.
D, we're getting you on the podcast. Come on, man. Tap in.
I've been having this awesome connection with a professor out in a college in Toronto, Canada. Okay. And so I believe I'm doing speaking for her class.
You going to Toronto or is
it
virtual?
No, it'll be virtual.
I was going to say, I carry your bags with
listen,
you.
I'm trying to make my way back up there.
Let's go worldwide. You've been out there before.
I've had the opportunity to go a couple of times, so it's been really cool. She keeps inviting me back, so I'm super blessed for that opportunity. And then I'm trying to think. I have some things next month, in May, I should say, for Foster Care Awareness Month. And so if you're out there and you need some speaker, motivator in regards to that specific, if you're doing an activity or you have a population that you want to pour into, reach out.
Yeah, definitely. Follow up. We'll tag all the social media handles and everything like that in the show notes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys soon. Let's go. Let's get it. DJ, Coach Felix, can't stop, won't stop. I want to thank you for joining me on the Felix Bobo Podcast. I hope today's conversation sparked some new ideas and gave you the encouragement to lead and learn without limits. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe and share it with another educational leader or anyone looking to make a difference in the world of learning. Remember, this podcast is just the beginning. You're now part of the family. a community dedicated to creating lasting impact. Until next time, keep leading with heart, keep learning with joy, and let's transform education together. Thank you for listening.